Hi there. This is episode 200. I cannot believe we made it to this point. I'm rattled, shocked. We made it to 200 episodes. It's been 4 some odd years, and we're at episode 200, and this is the new format, and this is what we do, in case you're unfamiliar. First, thank you to everybody who's listened over the course of this time period. It's been great. We're having a good time. We're gonna keep rolling. Things are going better than ever, and I cannot express to you how grateful I am for that. We have an excellent episode, 2 excellent episodes actually, if you're listening on the audio version, and on the YouTube version, you have one coming up afterwards. First, we have Mike Douglas on the show, the Godfather. The dude is as cool as a cucumber. The dude's amazing. I've looked up to him for a long time. New Canadian Air Force. He's been with Salomon forever. Switchback Entertainment. Producing films for Salomon Freeski TV. Salomon TV now. I mean, the dude does everything. And also, he is heavily involved with Protect Our Winters and Protect Our Winters Canada. The dude's got a lot of great things to say. He makes some excellent arguments for why you should become a member of POW and why you should become more involved in your community and actually give a shit about climate change. So psyched on that interview. It's a great listen. I hope you guys enjoy Mike as much as I do. Anyway, and then we have Christian Pepper. Christian Pepper is an internet sensation, if you will, ex-BMX rider, now mountain biker with some very bling bikes, some excellent content on the internet. Many of you have probably seen his videos, so I hope you guys enjoy that one as well. Before we get into the episode, there's a few housekeeping items to address. One, first and foremost, we have merch on the site. There's all kinds of stuff going on the Out of Podcast site and the Out of Collective site. Realistically, you can get to the Out of Collective site through the Out of Podcast site, whatever you want. Out of Podcast is where we host all the blog stuff, all the content. Will be at outofpodcast.com. If you click the shop button, it'll direct you to outofcollective.com. We're making it so that that's going to be less confusing in the future. But if you're listening to this, you can get 30% off of merch on the website using promo code IListened, and that'll get you 30% off the vintage gear that's on there. That'll get you 30% off on the stickers, keychains, hats. We have hoodies coming out. That'll get you 30% off through the end of May. So keep that in mind. It's an episode 200 special. I'm going to try not to ramble too much. First, we have Fisher Skis. Fisher Skis has been a partner of the show for 2-3 years now, and I could not ask for a better sponsor and a better partner to build this thing with. They have a brand new line of skis coming out for the fall. They have the Ranger line that has been completely redesigned. I'm thrilled. The skis are great. They ski amazing. They're fun. Somehow they're softer, but more energetic and stiffer with metal in them. None of those things together seem to make any sense, but as soon as you get on one, it'll make perfect sense. For reference, I'm 220-ish. We're starting to slim down a little bit. And I ski at 183. In New England, I go bigger if I'm skiing out west. They're phenomenal skis. My go-to is the 102. The 96 is also making a big comeback because it's, 1, it's a great color, and 2, it's just skis really, really well. The skis are great. Check everything out at fishersports.com. They also have a new boot coming for the kiddies in the fall and a redesigned Ranger Free, which is insane. The kids boot is the best kids boot that's ever existed for your little ones, called the 1 and the 2 from Fisher. So look for that in stores in the fall. I cannot talk about this thing enough. Looks like a Yeezy boot. And next, we have Mammut. Mammut has been a partner of the show, if Ethan wants to switch this ever, for a long time now. This is a partner that I've always kind of dreamed of having. They're great. First of all, this is the gist of this ad. You get 25% off of the best beacon that is on the planet Earth. Okay? I don't know about other planets, but on Earth, the best beacon in the world is the Barry Vox and the Barry Vox S. You can get 25% off, which never happens on Mammut's website, using promo code OUTOFBOUNDS25. O is capitalized, B is capitalized. Out of Bounds 25. And while you're there, you can also get 25% off of shovels, probes, whatever else is on there. The whole site, 25% off at mammut.com/US. Hit it up. And I'm sure the same deal applies in Canada. They have amazing backpacks. They have phenomenal rain gear, summer running gear, and it's just a rad company. I mean, Mammut, like, there's an interview coming out in a couple of weeks. You guys will hear. The product is so ridiculously well thought out. Like, say what you will about colors and styles. I actually really like the new stuff. It's really rad. The colors are actually different than everybody else's, which is cool. But the product is so well thought out and well built. It is the safest beacon and the best functioning beacon that is out there today, in my opinion, and in the opinion of people who are way more knowledgeable than me. So don't take my word for it. Take the word of a million different people out there that enjoy the safety that a Barry Box beacon offers them. Promo code is out of bounds 25, capital O, capital B, and save 25% off the whole Mammut website. That is all for ads for right now. I hope you guys enjoy this episode with Mike Douglas. The dude is a legend. Be sure to leave a review on iTunes, leave a review on Spotify, blah, 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 blah. Check out the blog post. Check out all the new content on the YouTube. If you are not subscribing, subscribe to this shit now, please. And without further ado, we have Mike Douglas. Mike, why don't you tell people, for those who don't know, who you are, a little bit about yourself, and then we'll kind of run through the whole bit.
You want me to tell people who I am?
I don't want to introduce you. I feel like that's a disservice to the guest, right?
I think foremost, I'm a skier. I've been passionate about skiing since I was a little kid, and always wondered if I could possibly make a life around skiing. And it turns out you can, and you can do it for quite a while. I've had a wild ride. It's been awesome. I've got to play freestyle mogul skier. The whole twin tip free ski launch phase was pretty wild, which sort of rolled over into becoming a filmmaker and trying to tell stories around skiing using cameras. And more recently, I've gotten involved with Protect Our Winters, and I've helped sort of grow that organization in Canada. So it's been a fun ride for sure.
You keep saying had a ski career, like had a life in ski, but you very much still have a life in skiing. Like, I mean, you're very involved.
Yeah. I mean, I think I just look at my ski career as sort of going through phases. So there was a time when mogul skiing was, I was on the national team and that was my life. And then that ended and it, a new chapter opens. I guess I'm, it's like a book, like you go through these chapters and it's interesting because I never believed when I was younger that you could keep it going as long as I have. And it's been a fun ride.
Yeah. You're definitely a role model for a lot of people, a lot of the younger athletes that are like, okay, how do I make it a career for more than, a little bit? You've kind of managed to like stretch it out. I mean, how long have you been a professional skier?
Well, I guess that depends on how you define professional skier. I got my first sponsors in 1989.
Okay.
So I don't even know how many years that was ago, but 33 years ago. Yeah. But I would say I got my first paid contracts a couple of years later. So probably like 91, 92, I was getting paid to be a skier. So I guess, I don't know, is that professional skier?
Yeah.
I don't really know where you draw the line these days.
I have no idea either. All I know is that's multiple years before I was even born. So that's, I think you've made a career longer than most people have for sure. What can I ask you? And I'm sure you've been asked this before. What do you attribute that longevity to?
Well, I think there's a couple things. I think first and foremost is I just like skiing a lot. I like to be out in the mountains. I like to slide on snow in its various forms. One of the things I like about skiing so much is that you can't get bored. Like if you get bored, then you're just not looking in the right places because, I think as free skiers, and I would say, I'm guessing that most of your your followers here on the podcast are probably would consider themselves free skiers. Yeah, there's, you can burn out or whatever. I'm tired of jumping. I'm tired of, just chasing lines or whatever. But for me, there's just so many different ways to do it. Last year I went on this sort of like all mountain carving kick for a while, and I got super into it. And I was watching videos about these like European master carvers and trying to emulate their technique and really, rail the ski over as hard as I can and stuff like that. And that was a really fun phase. I didn't do much of that at all this year, but there's just so many different ways to do skiing. And I would say the second thing that I would attribute my longevity to is just having really good timing. Because when I was young, freestyle was really popular. So started as a mogul skier. And then we kind of rolled into the whole twin tip new school phase in the mid to late 90s. And it was all about jumping. It was all about doing tricks. And I was at a point in my life where I could do that. I was young enough. I was nimble and flexible enough to do that. And then as I got older and stiffer, whatever, it kind of started turning more to the backcountry. And then over the last decade, it's really turned into this sort of earn your turns kind of style where you go out and you tour and ski a line or ski powder or go on an adventure or whatever. And it's funny because if that sequence of what was popular within the sport would have happened in any other order, I don't think I could have stayed as long as I have. And I just feel super lucky that I just happened to be at the right place at the right time.
I don't know if that's entirely true. I think there's a lot of things that go into being an athlete and having a long career. And I think you have a lot of those things, those kind of intangible things that people don't necessarily talk about. I mean, at least from the outside looking in, you're creating, people talk about content creators now, but I mean, you've been creating content for forever, right? Like that's part of your brand. It's part of what you've done as a professional. So I think that adds to it as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, telling stories, I think that's as old as humans, right? I mean, it's how we communicate. It's how information gets passed along. And that's always been interesting for me. I mean, I made my first ski movie in high school with a buddy of mine in 1986.
No kidding.
So that's been something that's been in me all along. And part of that is just that I really like skiing. I mean, I liked it so much that the reason that I, started filming and taking photos with friends when I was younger is that I wanted to be able to relive that stuff in the off season.
Yeah.
It's like cooking hot in the middle of the summer, and I'll go open my photo album back then and flip through the pictures and dream of those days we had in the winter. So it's been that's definitely been part of it is how can I keep these feelings and this passion flowing all year round.
Yeah. So let me ask you this then. Do you think it's more difficult to be a professional skier in today's day and age? Like if you're starting as a professional in 2020 or 2022 or whatever, do you think it's more difficult or easier? Because there's, on one hand, you have so much content that's out there in the world and it's so easy to make content. But on the other hand, there's so much content in the world and everybody's skiing at such a high level that I don't know. I guess I kind of struggle with this question as I'm talking to people more and more. You wonder, like, is it more difficult now to be a professional, or is anybody a professional because they can make money in the sport?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I would say it's easier now than when I first started. And I say that because when I started, it was the dawn of the professional free skier. Literally started by Scott Schmidt and Glenn Flake and the Greg Stump crew, right? I mean, there was no path to get paid to be a free skier back then. So the only way to become a professional skier, make a living as a skier, was to be a high level competitor. But that changed, by the mid 90s when the whole twin tip revolution happened and free skiing started to take off. All of a sudden it went, the group of us that kind of broke through some of those barriers at the time
made it really easy to become a pro for a short time after that. I mean, when a sport is growing like this, every brand is trying to build a team and get a piece of the action. And so, you know, they were, I mean, I remember showing up at like Super Park back in 2001 or something like that. And there were literally like, you know, there'd be the Oakley rep or whatever brand of that was supporting free skiing. There'd be a guy there signing people up on the hill. Like, whoa, that kid just did the sickest trick I've ever seen. Let's get a contract in front of him right away. You know, so there was an easy time. And then now I feel like, you know, and I want to say there was a good 10 years of kind of the glory days of it, where the contracts were pretty big. There was a lot of paid pros and you could make a pretty good living. And then I'd say in the last decade, it's gotten harder again. And the good part of it is that everybody has the opportunity to do it. Cameras have never been cheaper. Everyone has a platform. You got a social media channel or whatever. And you don't necessarily have to be the best skier. You know, you can be a really good creator or storyteller, or, you know, look at a guy like Nico Vunier who makes these crazy looping visual effects videos, and he's crushing it right now. And Nico's a great skier, but he's not the best skier,
right? But
he's doing really well because he's creating content in a way that no one else is. So there's opportunities, but you still have to be, you know, you still have to work hard. And then on the comp side, I don't think it's ever been harder, to be honest. The level that we're seeing, you know, at the X Games or on the Freeride World Tour is so high. The stakes are so high that it's tough. And I'm, you know, my kids are getting close to being adults now. And I'm kind of relieved that they didn't follow in my footsteps, because I don't want to be that parent standing out on the side of the course watching their kid do a, you know, triple cork off the 80-foot gap jump.
Yeah. I wonder how much value that side of things has as a general to sponsors, and even to athletes, like doing the competitive side of it, right? Because if you're not at that very top tier, you're not getting paid very much, right? And like, there's not a lot of eyes on you, and it's really hard to break through. And you're really doing it because either you have that competitive nature, or it's really what you love is competing, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a small group. And that's when, you know, that's why I say, you know, when young people are asking me what, you know, how do I become pro? And these are pretty common questions that I know I get. And I was talking to Cody Townsend about this recently. You know, we get all these messages in our DMs and stuff from kids saying, what do I need to do? And a lot of that advice, I mean, you can take the competition path for sure. It's probably the easiest path if you're very talented to make it through. Like if you win comps, then you're going to get noticed. It's that simple. But aside from that, it's creating content and telling stories and finding a way to make yourself unique. You know, how are you going to be different than that other kid over there who's really good too? And what's your story? Like, what are you about? And I think, especially, you know, when it comes to sponsors these days, there's not a lot of sponsors that are just looking for that kid who can huck. They're looking for that kid who can huck, but also is telling a story that's compelling and carrying that narrative. And you know, one of the easiest examples to see is someone like Nikolai Schirmer, for example, right, from Norway, who's out there skiing on the edge, but he's also, you know, telling stories about adventures in the mountains and doing it often through sort of an eco lens and how, you know, how his desire to not burn as much carbon kept him closer to home, which led him to hiking in the mountains in his backyard. And he's been able to create a pretty compelling channel by doing that. So
yeah,
there's definitely ways to do it, but you got to put some thought into it, and you got to get creative.
Yeah. I mean, he's one of the smartest people I think I've ever had on the show. And I've talked to him a couple times now. And every time I talk to him, I'm so impressed at not just his skiing, right? Because it's like what you said. I mean, there's better skiers in the world than Nikolai, but he the way that he tells stories and the way that he puts his content together is so engaging for people that it puts him on a different platform. And then when he has something to say, like about climate or about emissions, they listen to him, right? Like they actually engage and they're like, okay, this person knows what they're talking about. And obviously he's very well educated and all this stuff, but it's very interesting to see somebody take that route.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, you know, for kids too, they need to be authentic, right? I mean, people these days through social media and whatever, you can tell when someone's doing it because they think they should, or someone told them to do it. And I think authenticity can go a long way as well. So you gotta be true to who you are. And you know, we're using this eco example with Nikolai, but there's a lot of different ways to do it. And there's a lot of different reasons that people, you know, have a favorite skier or a favorite hockey player or whatever, is because, you know, they can identify and connect often with someone on a level that's not just about the sport.
Yeah. No, I mean, Salomon has some of the best storytellers consistently, I think too. It almost seems like that's Salomon's intention, is to sign athletes that are able to tell stories, or maybe it's Salomon on the other side. And maybe you can speak to this. That's kind of promoting that aspect of it. But you look at Drew Peterson in Ups and Downs, like that story was amazing. And that connected him to so many people at a very, very intimate level. You look at the 50 Project with Cody. I mean, you look at what you're doing. I mean, there's so much that connects you, especially to Salomon athletes. It feels like that platform gives athletes a different level of connection with fans and other skiers and people in the community.
Yeah, I think that, you know, since we launched Salomon TV, which was Salomon Free Ski TV back in 2007, it became apparent right away that people wanted to hear stories about skiing more than just like see the latest trick or see the sickest segment set to fast music in a ski movie. I mean, there'll always be a place for that, but I think that a lot of people want to see deeper stuff. And through Salomon Free Ski TV, the brand kind of realized that, hey, we're making really good connections with skiers and passionate outdoors people here. And they for sure encouraged everyone on the team to come up with some way to tell a story. And, you know, no one's been better at it than Cody.
Right.
You know, Cody got to that point in his career where he'd kind of done it all. And I remember talking with him not long after he did the crack.
Yeah.
and he was freaked out, man. He was scared because he didn't know where he was going to go from there. He's like, I just did the sketchiest, wildest, coolest thing I can ever imagine in the whole world. And what am I supposed to do next? And it took him a while to figure it out. And then he said, you know, he found Davenport's book and he was like, here's something that someone hasn't done. And I think this would be a really cool challenge. And when you look at the number of followers that are really behind Cody and the 50 Project, it's unbelievable. It's amazing.
Oh yeah. There's like multiple meme accounts that are based just solely on things that Cody does in episodes. It's hilarious. So on that topic, kind of what is your involvement with Salomon TV these days? Like what are you doing kind of behind the lens, and especially on the switchback side, what does a day-to-day look like for you?
Well, it varies year to year, season to season. This year I did a lot of production work.
Okay.
And I was behind the lens much more than in front of the lens. I actually dislocated my shoulder 3 months ago.
Nice.
And that kind of slowed me down a little bit this winter in terms of getting out there and skiing as hard as I can. It never stopped me. Fortunately, I've been able to ski, but I'm skiing through a little bit of pain and a little bit of discomfort and trying to manage that. So yeah, I mean, we're doing a new project for Salomon. We've got a new film coming out that's still untitled, but it's essentially we found 6 passionate skiers and then asked them who it was that inspired them to pursue a life on snow. And we kind of we actually pooled a whole bunch of skiers. We got it down to 6, and then everyone's story in this group is a little bit different. That person that inspired them. And then what we did is we took those people to confront the person that inspired them and tell them, like the effect that they had on their lives, and then filmed that process, and also filmed them then skiing together and talking about what that idea of influence and mentorship really means. And so that's the big project we're working on for Salomon this year. And then we've got with Switchback, we've got a bunch of commercial clients as well.
Awesome.
It was pretty busy production season, and I just came out of the studio. I'm editing some stuff right now for one of our clients. So I still get out. I think I'm close to like maybe 90 days or something this year. So I'm still out on snow a lot, but I often have a big heavy backpack on these days.
Yeah, that's pretty fucking good, man. How much of your time, and this is kind of a loaded question, how much of your time is spent touring versus on the chairlift?
I would say that probably, let's see here, just trying to mentally reflect on the season. I would say that 30 to 40%, probably a third of the days I'm touring.
Okay.
So I tour quite a bit. It's not like an everyday thing, but I tour a lot.
That side of the sport has progressed so rapidly over the past few years. Can you kind of speak to like what that's going to look like, what you feel like that's looking like in your area? I guess to me, it just seems like there's like the numbers are just very high, right? And they're growing every single year. And I think that's a good thing for the sport. But then you worry about things like avalanche danger and people getting the right education and, ability to access gear. And then on the flip side of things, there's all the pass options that are out there. And I guess I kind of wonder about the split and where skiing is headed, whether it's more towards going to these mega resorts or if it's more towards going, into the backcountry.
Well, for sure touring's grown. And I think that a lot of that growth has come off of, number one, the evolution in product. The products now compared to a decade ago are it's a night and day.
Way better,
like it's so easy for me to go out on any given day and just have my skins in my backpack and my shovel and probe. It's just always in there. And I have the option. I might go out and plan just to ski the hill, but always have the option. So that's a big one for sure. I think another thing that's driving it is just how crowded the hills are now. It's really busy. And for me, a lot of the days that I go touring here in Whistler is because I just don't want to deal with the crowds and the lines. I'd rather just go out and go for a walk and get a few powder turns and just have a nice, fun, mellow day out there. I don't think the mega resort is going anywhere. Unfortunately, yeah. We don't have to go down this road, but it's the number of passes of these mega passes being sold these days is insane. And as big as we think touring is, and for sure it's much more popular here than it was 5 years ago. It's always funny because one of our touring sort of classic routes that we do here at Whistler comes out right into the village. At the end of the day, you ski down this trail and you come out right in the village. And it always seems to be every time we come out, it's like the prime time for après ski and the Longhorn. And I don't know if you've been to Whistler, but if you have, anyone who's been to Whistler knows the Longhorn is right at the bottom where the two mountains runs come together into the village. And I'm pretty sure that every time I came out this year, I pointed out to my buddy and said, we always think of skiing as being this backcountry thing. We're out powder skiing and touring and all this. I'm like, there's probably twice as many people on that patio right now getting hammered as there was in the entire backcountry of Whistler today. So to more people, much more people than we think, that is skiing.
And what we're doing over here, that's just a little part. So
yeah, I get, it's a very valid point, and I think I run a ski shop, and that's I feel like I've said that way too much lately in interviews, so I got to stop doing that. But the point I'm making is, you see on these holiday weekends how many people come up and they just do not give a shit that the lines are going to be long. Like, you tell them, like, you're talking to them ahead of time and you're like, look, like, maybe go out in the afternoon, and they're like, no, like, we don't care. We're paying for parking. We're getting there, and we're going to just go and wait in line. Like, we're going to be mad about it, but it's part of the experience. Worst case, we're going to go, like, just drink beers outside. Like, that's really what a lot of the experience is for so many people. And I'm sure a bunch of people that listen to this that are casual skiers, they ski 3, 4, 5 times a year on holiday or whatever. That's what skiing is to them, is they bought a pass. I mean, it's 2.1 million Epic passes were sold last year, right? So that's not a small number. And it's just insane to think about that. That's somebody's first experience. And that's my worry, I guess, is that that's somebody's first experience skiing, is going and waiting in a line somewhere, versus first few times skiing is like starting in the backcountry or starting, skinning up a resort or something like that, Like, it just feels like a very different experience than even when I started skiing.
Yeah. And I mean, I think you're totally right. I mean, for a lot of people, it's just that social experience. It's something to do on the weekend. It's a way to go and tell stories and hang out with your buddies or whatever. And, I even see that in my son now. I mean, he's 18. He just got back from his first year at university, and I could totally see that's what his ski experience would be now. Would be 3 or 4 of his buddies. They would go up, they would do 2 runs in the morning. They'd have a big lunch and have a couple of beers. And then they would go back out and do one more run. And then they go après ski and go bananas for 4 hours. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, and it's interesting because when you occasionally, I'm sure we all do it. We have a buddy come up from the city that doesn't ski very often or whatever. We take them out for 2 or 3 runs, and the way we ski, it just destroys them in like an hour. They're oh, my legs, I'm cramping here, and it's you realize that us hardcore skiers, not everyone's like that, and thank goodness not everyone's like that, because imagine, I mean, the powder already gets tracked out ridiculously fast. If everybody was up there chasing it, it would be insane. So
yeah, for sure. You're 100% right. And actually, to that point, a mutual friend of ours, Dave Amaral, loves to do this to people. It's like, I think it's his favorite hobby, is to bring people in from the city or that don't ski very often and just hammer their legs into mush and just laugh at them the whole time and just like enjoy their experience, because they're having a good time. They're just getting beat to shit the whole day. And then he'll go and he'll operate with them all day. Like, that's just what it is. And some people enjoy that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Digi kind of encompasses the entire ski experience, because yes, he'll go up and hammer chairlifts as hard as he can. And then he'll make somebody, ice someone in the parking lot next, and then he'll go for a ski tour in the afternoon and then back to the bar. So Digi definitely lives it.
He's got 7 phones in his pocket at all times, and he'll be flying a drone and all this shit. It's amazing. He's a specimen. I should, while we're on this topic, I should ask you about this photo that he tweeted out to ask you about. What is it? You getting like fake arrested, actually arrested? What is this photo? What's the backstory?
So yeah, that was, I want to say 2017 or 18. We were actually down in Utah filming the skier versus drone race, where we put one of the top World Cup ski racers against the world drone racing champion down a gated course at Snowbird. And it was we just finished the shoot and the race, and we were down, I think we were having sushi somewhere in Salt Lake, and we came out of the restaurant, and I don't remember the exact circumstances, but as we came out and we were horsing around or play fighting on the sidewalk, and this cop came by and flipped his lights on and siren, and then like circle back. He was on a motorbike, and he circled back, and we're like, oh man, what, like, are we in trouble? Like what happened here? So he comes up and he's like, what are you guys doing? We're like, oh, nothing. I can't remember exactly what it was that made him stop. Anyway, he kind of goes to us like, I gotcha. It was one of these things.
And then he's like, I was just messing with you guys. Just checking. I thought I'd stop and say hi. It's kind of a slow night, whatever. So we just ended up talking to this guy, and I don't remember who told him to like, lock that guy up. He's sketchy. And so he grabbed me and like pretend to handcuff me and stuff. So anyway, he was a cool guy. It was one of those experiences that sort of like makes you believe that cops are actually okay.
Yeah. So. There are some good cops out there. It's been validated. I don't know how many there are, but there are good cops out there.
Yeah.
Which is, it's a nice thought to have. Okay. So kind of switching gears a little bit. You have been very involved with Protect Our Winters. It's like, I look through your Twitter feed and it's like the majority of the things that you tweet about is Protect Our Winters. And I think that's totally valid. And I understand. When did you start getting heavily involved? Why did you start getting heavily involved with Protect Our Winters? I actually just watched the video. I forget what it was called, but you and Sam, I think his name is.
Yeah, Sam and me.
Sam and me. And it's great. Like if anybody hasn't watched it, it is like a very heartfelt, like short film. It might even be like 30 minutes long. I feel like it was fairly long. But basically it's just this younger 13-year-old kid. He wrote you a message saying how worried he was about climate change. And that kind of spoke to me a lot, like that there's kids out there that are actually this worried about climate change. So I guess what I'm asking is what made you take an interest to it, and how did you get so involved with POW at this point?
Well, it all started for me back in the 90s, and it was in the film, as you know, but it was, I grew up, I cut my chops on the Horseman Glacier at Blackcomb, and that was summer skiing and summer training was where all the progression kind of happened. And I was up there every summer, 30 plus days for 15 summers in a row. And so I got to know that glacier intimately. I knew where every rock was, where the ice level was every year. And by the time we got into sort of the late 90s, the amount of change we were seeing in the glacier every summer became pretty dramatic and pretty obvious. And that was around the same time that global warming was really starting to make some headlines. And so for me, it was not just this, vague random news story. It was something that I was actually seeing. And that made me kind of pay more attention. And for a long time, I always thought that the government was going to do something about it. Similar thing with the ozone layer back in the late 80s, early 90s, where the nations of the world came together and said, okay, we've got to cut these chemicals out and repair the ozone layer. We're all going to fry. And I figured something like that would happen again. And it didn't. And, I'm not I never considered myself an activist. My parents aren't hippies. They're just like normal blue collar workers, like most the average people. And, I never really worried about stuff like this. But as time went on and I started to notice more things around the world and more changes happening and the voices became louder, I started speaking out and, started doing it through social media, Twitter, Instagram, whatever. And, but it was, I want to say, and I started to see what Jeremy and POW was doing down in the US and then eventually met up with a crew from POW and they brought me on as an ambassador. And shortly after that started, it became more and more apparent that if we were going to do something about climate change, that we had to do it at a policy level, at a governmental level. So as POW became more political, it felt a little bit strange for me to be speaking out so much on US politics. Even though I am a little bit of a politics nerd, it was kind of hard not to be with the whole, what's been going on the last 6 or 7 years down there. And so, but at the same time, Canada has its own problems and we're not that much different than the US. So we got, myself and a few other athletes and individuals got POW going in Canada back in 2017. We started working on it. And yeah, here we are 4 years later. And I'm, an athlete ambassador, but I'm also the chair of the POW Canada board and have been quite active with them up here, for the last few years. And as a dad, right? It's tough to imagine what my kids might have to endure in the future, and I don't want to, get to my old age and feel like I didn't at least try to do something about it. So that's kind of what's got me going. And then I got a letter from Sam, the one that you saw there in the film, and hearing that there's 13-year-old kids that are having trouble falling asleep at night because they're so worried. That sucks. It's as adults, we can't be proud of that we're leaving this burden onto the kids. And so that's kind of been the main drive behind it. And I'm a firm believer that the only way we're going to tackle this problem at the scale needed is by banding together, joining a group, using a collective voice to make big level change. I mean, I try to live as clean of a lifestyle as I can, doing all the right things on a personal level as much as possible. But at the same time, I know that that's not going to get us there. There's no way. So we have to band together, and we have to work as a group.
So let me ask you, I feel like every POW ambassador, athlete, whatever that I've talked to has mentioned activism and almost like kind of brushed off the activism side, like where they initially thought that activism was a bad thing. Like they didn't like think about it as something that they wanted to be, was an activist. Why does that have a negative connotation, do you think? Why? Like, because I feel like so many of the good things, and we're seeing that more and more in today's culture, come from people actually doing things like that is activism in 2022, right? Is like actually like speaking up, using your platform, doing these positive things. I guess I just wonder why. I don't know. It almost seems like there's a underlying sense of like, I don't know why I'm saying this, but I'm saying it because I care, right? I guess I just don't necessarily understand it.
Well, I mean, I think activists in general has a negative connotation to it. I mean, people see activists as the people that are disrupting their morning commute. They're blocking the highway. They're doing this, and that, I guess that pisses a lot of people off. It's interesting, and it's kind of cool that UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has come out and made some pretty bold statements about, because the right wing and the fossil fuel industry paints anyone who talks about climate change and environmentalism as radicals, right? And he's started to come out and say what's radical is knowing what the problem is and not trying to do anything about it. And it's also interesting that these activists that are so disruptive right now are actually winning court cases against the fossil fuel industry. Kids that are banding together and saying, you know what, these guys are screwing our future. But it's tough to shake. It's tough to shake that stigma around being an activist. And I've never really felt comfortable. I mean, I have friends that are activists. Like, we all know Caroline Gleick, right? Like Caroline Gleick is an activist. So she's an activist, and she owns that, and she's proud, and that's great. But I guess I didn't grow up that way. I like skiing, right? And people are like, what are you talking about? What do you know? You're just a skier. It's like, well, I'm a human on planet Earth concerned about the future of humanity. And if that makes me an activist, well, I guess I just want to give my kids and the future generations a chance, because I think life on Earth is pretty damn sweet a lot of the time, especially when you get out into the natural world and get to play around. So
yeah, no, I 100% agree. And it seems insane to me that people think otherwise and don't see it from that perspective. But I don't know. The activism thing for me is it's very weird, because even when I say things about certain topics, certain things going on, I feel like, what am I fucking doing? Like I'm on a soapbox again, like doing this thing. And it's weird because you almost have this sense of guilt where, like, what do I know? Right. And then somebody tells you, what do you know? Like, just stick to skiing, stick to snow sports, bikes, whatever. But I think that's what matters, right? You impact people at a smaller, like this is kind of the community that we have is snow sports and outdoors. Like those are the people that you can talk to directly and they'll listen to you the most. And I think that's what POW has done really well is they've positioned all of these athletes in a way that makes it easy to kind of put that message across to like the outdoor user. It's like, we're just like you. We just want to go skiing. We just want to have a good, like we want to enjoy our time in the outdoors. And we want to make sure it's there for our kids and for future generations. And honestly, for any of us still.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, as you know, like the people listening to us right now, there's a good chance that they're skiers. And right. As skiers, you know, we're out there, we're seeing these changes. And I think that gives us an obligation to try and protect it. And you don't have to necessarily take on climate change, but you might want to protect that stand of trees that's near the bottom of the hill from the next condo development. You know, it's a habitat for the animals or for whatever it is. It can be anything. But if we don't start to protect these things that are around us, it's going to be too late.
Yeah. This is again a thing that I kind of end up asking anybody that comes on from POW or, you know, has some knowledge in this area. What can people do that's most impactful to help protect our winters, help slow climate change, and just be better on the day-to-day, right? Because I know the broad answer is like, okay, corporations make up the biggest difference, right? And I've heard Jeremy say it before, right? Like those bigger corporations are what makes the biggest impact in the fossil fuel industry, in climate change in general. But what can people do as an individual to make changes in their community, in their day-to-day lives? Is there something?
Absolutely. 100%. The first and most important thing is join a group, because, you know, and we can use a negative example on the power of groups to make it clear for people. Look at the NRA in the US.
Yeah.
Look at the pull that organization has. I mean, it's weakened in recent years, but the gun lobby through the NRA in the US has made it so that there's been no reform in that area in America, even though the stats are clear that it's the proliferation of guns that is killing people and mass shootings and all these kinds of things. But because they have such a strong membership, politicians don't want to cross that membership. Mm. So it's similar, you know, and it's interesting because I was just in Ottawa last week meeting with the senior officials of the Canadian government, which was awesome. I mean, that's been a goal of POW Canada since the beginning, was to get into those rooms with the ministers that make the laws that affect us all on this side. And we were in that room last week. And, you know, here in POW Canada, we've got 23,000 members. And I told them in that room, I said, I'm going to come back here in a few years with 200,000 members. Mm. And they said, please do, because we want you to, you know, if you guys have the backing, if all the skiers sign up for POW and all of a sudden there's this wave of force behind that brand, we have to listen to you and we want to listen to you. But it's numbers that talk, you know, because as many, you know, there's 23,000 members standing behind POW Canada in those meeting rooms the other day, but there's also 23,000 members that were standing behind Alberta Oil and Gas saying, we need to protect our jobs. We need to protect Canadian oil and gas. So, you know, if we could come in with 4 times their numbers, all of a sudden that scale is going to tip in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's always the argument that I have a hard time answering is like, what about jobs, right? I never know what to say to that one, right? It's like, what about the jobs that the fossil fuel industry creates? Like, I'm not saying it's a good thing, but it exists.
What about the video store jobs at Blockbuster? What about the people that were making fax machines? You know,
this is that's actually a very good point. I'd never thought about it like that until right now. Yeah,
it's been well studied by by leading universities that building a sustainable future and sustainable energy, it creates something like 4 times the jobs of the fossil fuel industry.
No shit.
So the jobs thing is kind of BS. I mean, the one thing is, first of all, people don't like change.
For sure.
And I can tell you that oil and gas workers like change even less, because you know why? They make so much money.
Yeah.
Like seriously, I was talking to a buddy of mine the other day, and his friend works up in the tar sands in Alberta and makes more than double the wage of a master's degree high school teacher in BC. More than double. Unskilled guy working on the oil fields.
What the fuck?
So there you go. I mean, nobody wants to think that they're making 150 grand a year and then next year they're going to make 75 because they've had to shift industries. So there's a lot of resistance there, but change is inevitable, and ultimately that change will be made. It's at a certain point you have to embrace it, and things are always in flux. There's no certainty.
Yeah.
So we have a choice. We have a choice. We can get on this change that we need sooner and get on the front foot when it comes to this transition, or we can wait and then have to deal with the fallout. And we're already starting to see that, especially, I don't know, I think the Northeast, you're in the Northeast, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's quite as bad for you guys, but here in BC, if we just look at the past year, we had the heat dome come through in June last year, which was insane. We were breaking all-time temperature records by 5 degrees Celsius. 600 people died in the lower mainland of Vancouver in 48 hours of heat stroke.
Holy shit.
I mean, this is stuff like you think, wait a sec, this is Canada, on the coast. Like how can this even happen? But then that was followed by one of the worst fire seasons we've ever had. I mean, the whole of BC was shrouded in smoke for 6 weeks, 2 months, something like that. And then in the fall, we had record-setting floods where every single highway between Vancouver and the rest of Canada was washed out. Every highway. Yeah. And so, you think, oh, well, it's supposed to get worse. So maybe we should think about doing something sooner than later. And,
that part is like a no, none of it is really a question for me at all. I always just wonder how to answer these questions. And I guess that's kind of what an organization like POW does, is how to answer those questions, what things, what tools, what resources that you can kind of get by being a member of POW, right? Like that's part of the whole deal, is getting that education and learning more.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's blatant to me.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the challenges with climate organizations as well is that it's a depressing topic, right? It's a place that you don't want, even me, I don't want my mind to spend a lot of time thinking about this stuff. I have to kind of break out of it and just go for a bike ride or go for a ski or whatever. It's a tough place. And one thing that we're working on with POW Canada is how can we make doing the right thing fun and motivating. And so we're working on some positive ways, I'll say, to get people more involved. And I'll use electric vehicles as a great example. So 3 years ago, I finally bit the bullet. My wife and we bought an EV. And now 3 years on, I can say it was one of the best decisions I've ever made. And not necessarily because, wow, I drive around guilt-free, but it's just really fun to drive. Yeah, like if you've ever driven an EV, they've got so much torque off the line. It's fun. I'm a bit of a tech nerd. I'm like trying to be as efficient as I can. Oh, I've got my kilowatt hours per 100K down to 8.9 on this drive. Woo, and, but I love it. It's the best car I've ever had.
What'd you get?
We have a Kia Niro.
Oh, sick.
Yeah. So it's been fun. Like it's made doing, the right thing. And of course there's 10 people listening to this right now that are going, oh, EVs are just as bad as gas cars and you should be riding a bike instead and whatever. But the thing is, for a lot of people, it's a positive experience. And I think the more that we can create experiences that help point us in the right direction, that actually give people some enjoyment in their lives, the better off we're going to be.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the right way to approach it. I mean, I don't know shit about anything, but I do think that is the most motivating way to get people to do things. Isn't scare tactics. It's making them be like, okay, I can do the right thing. I can feel good about what I'm doing, and it's fun. Like I'm having a good time doing it. I think that's huge.
Yeah.
Amazing. Let's do. We got a bunch of questions for you. So we'll do some of those, and I'll let you get out of here. I don't want to take too much of your time. But a bunch of people have some pretty good questions, actually. Cool. Mike, do we get to ski next year? Okay. Matt McCallery wants to know, how has your enjoyment of skiing changed through the years, Canadian Air Force to now?
I would say, like, in a general sense, it's, back in the new Canadian Air Force days, it was more about excitement, accomplishment, breaking new ground all the time. Like every day we'd go out, we'd try to either do a trick better than we did it last time or come up with a new trick, or there was just this insane progression cycle. And that was super motivating in the beginning. And for a long time, I think I was motivated by pushing myself and trying to ski better than I ever have. And as the years have gone on, now I would say I just like being out there. It's not necessarily, there's days when I go out and try and push my skiing a little bit, but those are more rare than the days where I just want to be out there, looking around, looking at the sights, breathing hard and just soaking up the natural world. It's gone from adrenaline to more zen, I would say, in a nutshell.
Do you still have that like desire for the adrenaline?
Yeah, it's something that you kind of have to wean yourself off, because one of the toughest things about becoming an aging pro skier is that, you had those highs when you were doing things at the cutting edge of the sport. It feels good. It's fun. You scare yourself, you pull it off, you're like, whoa, that was awesome. And those feelings come less frequently. But also, you just shift. You just realize that just being out there is sometimes all you need.
Yeah, for sure. I can't even imagine. Let's see. This one was funny. Big Party Weekend wants to know, why are you the godfather and not some other part of the weird family tree of free skiing? It's from Big Party
question.
Weekend.
So the whole godfather thing was started by the former marketing manager of Salomon North America, Ted Wardlaw. And he didn't even bounce it off me. He just... he was putting together an ad campaign that ran in all the magazines. I want to say it was probably 2001 or 2 or somewhere around there. And it was a shot of me doing some cool trick or whatever. And it just said the godfather of the new school or something like that, Mike Douglas. And then it just kind of stuck, and people started calling me godfather, whatever. And at a certain point, you just, well, okay, it could be worse. I mean, a lot of my buddies here rag me and call me the grandfather now, but I guess there's worse things to be called.
Yeah, there certainly is. That was a good question, actually. That's funny. I don't know how. It's funny that you didn't have a choice in that nickname, and I always wonder. Nicknames are a weird thing to give yourself, anyway.
Yeah,
but
you don't want to give yourself a nickname.
It's kind of douchey, but like it is odd that someone would print that and not run it by you.
Yeah, first. and not even tell me. Yeah, it was kind of like I saw it. I think I saw it in Freeze magazine the first time or something.
That's amazing. Ryan Dunphy wants to know best story from the High North days.
Well, the funny thing is, so Ryan should know this, but High North was Shane Zox's camp. So a little summer ski camp history. I used to work, Shane Zox and I used to work for John Smart at SMS camps, which is now called Momentum. It's actually the last ski camp surviving here on the glacier at Blackcomb. And Shane and I bugged John to shift the camp from being pure moguls to adding like this sort of new school free ski element to it. And so we kind of trial ran it 1 year and then realized it was pretty popular. And so I ended up partnering with John at Momentum, and starting like, half the camp at that point sort of shifted over to this free ski stuff. And then Shane decided to start his own camp, which was High North. And so we operated kind of on opposite sides of the Showcase T-bar on the Horseman Glacier. And so, Momentum was in this corner and High North was over here in this corner. And there would just be these constant battles back and forth, be it like stereo systems battling, like who could have music supremacy on the glacier, and lots of, stealing our flags and stuff like that. I want to say the High North guys were a little more prank orientated than we were. We were a little bit more mature. They were more the glacier punks, I'll say. But I remember we were all buddies though, and all hanging out together. And I remember there was one summer where the High North guys started pranking each other internally inside the camp. And they had this battle where everyone would one up it. And if I recall, I think the prank ended when someone took a can of sardines and went to one of the guys' cars and slipped the sardines down into the heat duct of the car, which essentially, if I'm not mistaken, it ruined the car. Like they destroyed his car.
What?
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure that's where that one ended, but those guys are insane pranksters for sure.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, I'm good on that. I think I'm all set. Okay. Last question. Maybe one more after that, depending on how fast I read. Mainly Skiing wants to know, Gaffney does B-Day backflips. How old can Mike get and still get upside down?
Well, I don't know. I did a backflip about 2 weeks ago.
How'd it feel?
I was out skiing with a bunch of the young free ride superstars, locals, and then there's this group of Jackson kids that are sponsored by Salomon. They were all up here a couple of weeks back, and I was trying to keep up with them. Man, the talent in these teenagers is insane. It's mind blowing, to be honest. But they were egging me on and trying to get me to keep up and like, come on, man, you can do it. And so I went down and threw a backy off this wind lip under the peak chair, which I've never actually done before. I'd never even hit the thing. So yeah, I love it. My shoulder definitely slowed me down a little bit this year. I haven't done a D-spin this year, but I'm not done yet.
You got time.
And Gaffney just slowed himself down. He got all beat up at the Eagle's Nest at Squaw there. So if you're listening, Gaffney, hope you recover, bud, because we got to keep the battle going.
For sure. That's amazing. How old are you now?
52.
Are you really?
Mm-hmm.
You look fucking good for 52, man. You don't look that old. I would have guessed 40s.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, no problem. I don't know. Although also I'm a horrible somebody asked me the other day how old I thought they were, and I said like 47 or something, and he was 68. So take that with a grain of salt, I guess. I'm not the best judge. Okay, last question, because it's kind of a Salomon plug, and we'll give you that. Favorite pair of skis in the Salomon line?
Current favorite pair of skis?
I mean, you can answer all time too.
Well, I would say my all-time fave was probably the Pocket Rocket.
Okay.
I think that ski was just, we did the 1080, which was super amazing, but I was a big driver of the Pocket Rocket because being the old guy in the group, and from the guy from Whistler, I wanted something fat that I could take and do tricks in the backcountry. It was super light and very progressive at the time. And 90 mils underfoot was super fat. So it was just hilarious. I haven't skied on a ski that narrow in years. But my current setup is, I would say I'm about 70% skiing the Salomon QST 106,
okay,
the new one that just came out, which is sweet. I'm really digging it. And then I ski maybe about 20% on the Salomon Stance 96.
Okay.
Really like that ski for ripping the hill. It's just super powerful. And then I'm about 10% on the Salomon MTN 95. So super lightweight touring setup for the bigger touring days.
Yeah. What, and I'll ask this question because somebody was harping on me in the comments. He was like, ask him about skiing tight trees and all the hoopla that came from when you posted that you were skiing tight trees, and somebody from New England was like, oh, this is not tight enough.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've spent some time skiing in the East, and I have a lot of respect for East Coast skiers. You guys don't have it easy, but you charge hard. And I love it. I finally got back out and skied in the East this year. I was at Tremblant in February, and it was awesome. But we have some pretty tight trees not far from my house, and it's a little bit of a touring lap to go up there and ski through them. And I think the one he's referring to was there's a mountain bike trail, and it's literally the trees on each side are so tight you can't get through them. But because I ride this trail in the summer all the time, I know exactly where the bends are.
Yeah.
So I can ski it much faster than you would ever ski it if you didn't know where you're going.
Yeah.
And then I always try to give some props to the East Coasters, because I know that's just a normal tree skiing run for you guys. So.
Yeah, kind of. I don't know. People are nuts about this kind of stuff. Like they look at it on the internet and they're like, oh, I could ski that. And then you bring them there and there's no way anybody's skiing that, especially not at speed. We have Brooks Curran is a New England based skier, and it's the same story. He's always skiing tight shit. And like every time I share one of his videos, somebody's like, oh, it's not even that tight. It's not even that serious. And I'm just like, dude, like why do we need to do this? Right. Why do we need to do this? Mike, thank you for the time. Where can people find you on social? If people want to connect with you, where can they find you? The whole deal.
Well, I'm probably as you know, I'm probably the most active on Twitter and Instagram. Both are Mike D Ski. And I don't really go on Facebook, but I know my Instagram goes to Facebook. So it would appear as though I'm active there. And then and then just check out a lot of the work that I do ends up on the Salomon TV YouTube channel. If people want to check that out, we've got our latest film, Sam and Me's, up there. If you're interested in that conversation that we just had, and aside from that, hope to see you in the mountains. Because honestly, I'm spending less time on socials than I used to, which I think is a good thing.
It's for sure a good thing. You're not leaving Twitter because of Elon?
No, but I'm not a huge fan of what's coming, but I don't know. Maybe he'll surprise us in a good way.
Yeah, maybe he's a wild card.
He is.
Cool. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, thanks. My pleasure.